Hail, inexorable grief, that great deep. The Sibyl says it is endless, the smell of earth, all surrounding, like swaddling. Worms and flowers, they puncture through me like pudding skin. They spiral from my eyes, reaching. A nightlight helps me see. Ducks splash in the dark under the moon. I am made of silver, and I slide through the cracks. I tongue the cracks, and they shudder. The glass of the lake breaks open. Down, black, down, black, down, black, down. Specters ride, teeth and bouncing dread, propitious depths, an ancient mystery procession, a creation story. Rains, 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 whipping flanks, faster. The wind whinnies, threads his fingers through my hair. Throat arched toward the gods' great mountain. Ah, pretty cave queen. Dead, dread, desire. Captive little dismal realms, this ash, frantic and forgotten, these shades. Night songs and poppies, the falling makes my belly flip, grasping at the sides of the car. The rocking makes me drowsy. Cavern kingdom, wild gates, secure from search, a river of forgetting. The nightlight shines through the cracks. I lick the locks, an ocean of throat knots, pinned flowers. Death magnanimous, generous woe, four-yoked, freedom. The petals keep coming. I am giddy from his holy eye, invisible and turning in its socket. I fluster and writhe in front of its pupil, a void of black hair, ink spreading, tablecloth, tumbling night. I eat night ground, upside down. He fingers vertebra, finds delight. Bone, buttercream, bone. I know that life is like an egg yolk, hopeful and fragile. I am dressed in a laugh, in a slither, a delicacy, terrestrial taking, flowers. Food of the dead. I vomit sparkles, flash lashes, silver perfume. The moon spins in its window like silk. Pomegranates. Eyes lock like war. O mighty Damon, enthroned king, dispensator, keep it coming now, keep it coming. Groves and crowns, and banquets and halls and cars impelled by death. I'm gonna sit in your lap, spread across you like spring. Put your hand right here, make me gasp for air. I levitate. Ah, I rise. Rock me. Rock me. Rock me. Stars flow from my thighs, a supernova. The gods laugh, petals fall. I spill over, into, up from the earth, a violence of green, bursting forth into breath.
Wow, April.
Thank you.
What an
Thank you.
introduction to April. And what a great way to start the new year. I feel like that was so, I don't know, I needed that.
Mm, cool.
It was so great to see you in Copenhagen and get to see you perform that piece. It was so fantastic and such the same thing, such a breath of fresh air in that university conference.
Right, right. Academic setting. Yeah, you know, the mm, I really wanted to embody it, you know. I think that's what compels me to act and to dance and to become it. I mean, that this is kind of um how I connect to the gods. Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows. Oh, that dance was so fantastic. And Carl said he often, often actors kind of rub him the wrong way because he feels like they're like taking energy from the audience, but he felt like your
Okay.
performance was such a like gift. Like you were really like giving something to the audience in a way that it was very powerful.
Okay. That's a especially coming from Carl, that's a wonderful compliment. Yeah.
Do you want to
Thank
talk
you.
about the backstory that led to that piece or?
I would love to actually. I'm dying to talk about that because uh there's so many parts to it, but I went to Eleusis in Greece. So I don't know if you can see, I have Pluto, the glyph, the astrological Pluto glyph tattooed over my heart.
Mm.
So you can see there's a painting of me behind me that has that too.
I was
But
looking at that.
yeah, that's Jessica Luna. She's done the Pythonic tarot. That's her painting there.
Mm.
That's I use that for my astrology social media things, but my website. But so it's been like a lifelong thing to want to go to Eleusis. Like that was like a dream. And I went and it was I can't even describe it. I mean, the only way I could describe it was kind of that poem, you know? And even then, like when I was writing the poem, it felt like I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the feeling of it, like of what I felt when I was at this site. Well, let me tell you first, like what I did when I was there. So I got there, I got out of an Uber and crossed the threshold into the place, and a man approached me and he goes, "The Sybil has arrived," which I thought
Mm.
was so cool. I thought this is a great like way to enter into this place, you know, to be kind of recognized in a way. I was like, okay, maybe from a past life or something, you know. So I went in and uh I don't know. I could have been there all day. I was there all day. I mean, I could have lived there. I just didn't want to leave once I got there. I got there early in the day and I just wanted to stay and I wanted to touch every stone that I saw and just
Mm.
read everything and just sit in every spot, you know. But when I got there, I had a pomegranate that I'd gotten at the farmer's market in Athens. I was staying in the Exarchia district, which is this really cool part of the city. And it was interesting when I was buying the pomegranate, I was having this kind of Persephone Pluto kind of moment because there were men that were like saying, that's where I got the one of the lines in the poem. He's like, pretty girl, you know, while I'm buying the pomegranate. I was like, you know, this felt like this kind of this Pluto energy leading up into this.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. And then, so I brought the pomegranate as an offering, and I'd gotten that idea because I had heard that that's what people did, and it was perfect. So I did a ritual there, which I'm not going to describe, but and I left the pomegranate inside the Plutonian, that's the first place I went. I was drawn right there, and that's the Temple of Pluto. And so, and there's a well and a lot of it I don't remember really. I just remember the feeling more than the site itself. But I
Mm.
do remember, and I have pictures of everything um, that maybe I can even send you after the podcast if you want to. You know, I don't know if you how much you edit this, but you could put them up if you wanted to. But like, it's a cave, and you go, you know, what it's the mouth to Hades. It's the mouth to the underworld. And that's where a lot of people had left their pomegranates there.
Mm.
And it was just this beautiful sight to see all these pomegranates at this. I feel like I could get teary about it, you know, the mouth of the cave of Pluto for Persephone,
Mm.
you know, and this was her abduction site at Eleusis and um, this holy site. And so I danced there, and that was the part that was the most moving and profound for me, and I'll just never forget it. It was a life, like a life-changing moment for me. I felt transformed in this moment where I felt like I became Persephone myself. And she's been a goddess, of course, that's been holy, that's been important to me since I was a kid. When I first heard that story, I just remember getting this feeling, that I could, that I'd never had before, listening to the story of Pluto and Persephone. And so I danced there, and I just went into trance, so that was the way, sort of another offering that I brought, as well as a way of communication, as well as all the things that it was, and a ritual and all of this. And then I went to the rest of the site, and there was a temple of Hecate there. Her temples are all throughout the Eleusis procession, Keramikos, which is the cemetery where the procession begins. And so she's very integrated with the whole story in a really different way than I had understood the story. But and then I went to the museum, and I can tell you about that as well. But I had a conversation just quickly. The museum is done beautifully. It's a piece of art in itself. It's not like, and here is this artifact and this. They've made the Persephone story really come alive with like an installation.
Mm.
And it just gave me all those same feelings that that story's always given me, of the abduction of Persephone, and the spirituality of it, and the eroticism of it, and the psychological impacts of it. It was just so well done. There's a woman there who I got into a conversation with. We were talking about the connection between Persephone and the Morrigan, because I live in Ireland. And there's also a mouth to the underworld that's dedicated to the Morrigan, called the Morrigan's Cave, that had a similar feeling. And Persephone is called the Phantom Queen, as is the Morrigan. So we were making these sort of intuitive connections in our conversation, which I thought was really, that was another highlight there, But this poem, I tried to write. I've written many poems from this experience, but I was trying to sort of write about the experience or about the Persephone story, and it just felt so prosaic. It just didn't, none of it quite worked. And so what I did was I took what I had written, and I took the Orphic hymn to Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the way you work with cut-ups.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it virtually. So I took the text from both what I had written myself, journal entries and poems and things, and the Orphic hymn, and I mixed it together. And there's like a program where you can do that, and it just randomly creates new phrases from it. So I took the phrases that really moved me and that felt like, so I just went into kind of a more surrealist space, and I took the phrases that really moved me and that felt like it. And then I put them together to create the story of Persephone. So I kept a lot of things that I had written already as a basic structure, and then pulled some of these things. So something, a car impelled by death, that's coming right from that Orphic hymn, which I had recited at the site, actually, the Orphic hymns to Persephone and Pluto both. But I took the one for Pluto and did this. And that's kind of how I created this poem, almost like a sculpture. And I was so happy with it because it told the story of Persephone. And then the part about the lake is I live next to a lake, and it freezes over. And so I was kind of bringing in my own experience of the swans on the lake, and being like kind of in the dark in my room, and feeling like there's a nightlight. I just kind of brought all this sort of inner landscape, I don't know how to describe it, things into that then make it sort of bring it into this real world dimension of a nightlight helps me see. I don't know. I just
I
decided it
think you're
didn't
doing a
have to make
great job of
sense.
explaining it. Yeah.
Okay. But in fact, the fact that it doesn't make sense in a lot of places, I felt like is exactly how it felt to communicate with these gods and this goddess, to say to that it doesn't make sense. It's a feeling.
Exactly. You're not using the rational mind in those moments.
Right, it's a transmission that's non-rational and it's
Mm,
experiential, and that's the mystical, experience.
absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's completely amazing. And like I said at the conference, this is the conference Tide of Ghosts that we both were at in Copenhagen in October, organized by Casper OPSTRUP and Chin RUDBØG, who I had on the podcast to promote. Yeah, and it was such a great event, and you were there. So many great old friends, and that wonderful ritual at the end at the kind of punk club was very necessary. I feel like, yeah. It was, yeah. We can always use more dancing.
You can always use more dancing. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, the party at the end was great. That was really fun.
It's
Yeah,
needed. I wish all academic conferences had the kind of mix because they did a really good job of mixing in the films
they
and
did.
yeah, they had artist talk and I didn't give like a straight academic talk. I talked about making my book Things Happen. So that was kind of something different, which
Mhm.
is more where I'm at now.
Your presentation was so moving, Vanessa. Yeah,
Well, thank you. It,
it
it
was really
it got me
beautiful.
more choked up than I realized. It's actually the first time I talked about it with people on the podcast a little bit who
Yeah,
asked me about it, but I hadn't presented it in front of like people I don't know. Um, the
right,
virtual audience, I don't see them. So to me, I'm just hanging out in this room talking to friends.
right,
And then it's like
right,
strange when people are like, I listen to your podcast, and I'm like, how do these people know me?
right. Yeah.
But there was
Was
like
that
they were there in person, and I
parasocial?
was like, oh, this is like very personal, and here it is. It's like spilling your guts.
Yeah, right.
Your performances must feel like spilling your guts, but you must be, I guess, used to it because you do them. So yeah, you've done it for such a long time. I've only recently started spilling my guts in public.
Okay, right. Well, that's the beauty of making it art, right? And making it poem is like it's a coded gut spilling,
Mm.
right? So it's not like a memoir where I'm telling everybody exactly everything, right? It's symbolic. So I'm saying absolutely what is true and what I experience. And it is, like in my guts, right? I'm showing like everything, but I'm showing it in a way it's not direct, it's indirect. So
Mm.
that's what makes it doable, I think.
Yeah, it's poetry, it's dance. Mm. Well, it's beautiful, and thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that before we talk about all the other fabulous things you do, like astrology?
Um, I don't know. I'm thinking about what I might say about it. I can't think of anything right now. I mean, I could certainly talk about Pluto and Persephone endlessly about all the like the the things about that story that intrigue me, I love the fact that it's like a 4,000-year-old story that everybody still wants to hear,
Mm.
and I love that it's a mother-daughter also there's the mother-daughter, which has been cut out of everything now, it's like the mother-son story and then father-son, but there's no mother-daughter. There's even father-daughter in Christian, I'm thinking. Um, but
Yeah,
here
and
it is.
Freud, it's the same. Freud talks all about the son
Right,
and the father's son and the mother's son, and a little the daughter, not really. It's mostly about the
right,
father and the son and the mother and the son, and the girl's just not there.
right, right. Just okay, but like it
And
doesn't
forget
matter.
about the
Like we're
mother
just
and the daughter. Yeah. It
fused and
all has
going
to
on
go through the
instinct, I
masculine.
guess. Yeah. I guess I say I was thinking that part of the reason it's dismissed is because it's feminine, right? So it's just mother and daughter. That's just instinctual. What would you need to study? You just do that. It's like the most complicated relationship you can possibly have, you know,
Mm.
and it's dismissed that way. Well, and I think it's also where there's a lot of power. So that's another reason it's dismissed, right?
Absolutely. I would love to hear about your witch coming of age story.
Oh,
Because you're, of course, coming from New York.
yeah. Coming from New York. And so like my when I discovered witchcraft
Yeah, what's
kind of
your journey
thing,
been like?
I that's such a big question and it's a cool question. And I so I think I was already a witch. I mean, I feel like I was born a witch.
Yes.
I was a witch when I was a kid. I didn't know that's what it was that I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was always, a lot of people, I guess, well, I can just say what I do, right? So I feel like I was already speaking to the gods when I was young. I just didn't know that's what that was. Like I
Mm-hmm.
could sense that kind of numinous energy. So when I discovered mythology and they came alive like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that's what I've been sensing. I remember seeing a picture of the Morrigan for the first time when I was in Bronxville Library, public library, when I was young, very young, and it was a picture of her. She was like this, she was made it. She was a crow woman, and she had this. It was all. It was a black and white picture, and I'll never forget it. And I have it somewhere. I'm pointing that way because I have all my boxes from the United States still in boxes in that room. I just had them delivered not too long ago. So it's in there somewhere. But I remember that feeling too, this recognition,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I saw and the way I experience it is like I see myself there and other at once. Say Persephone, same thing. Like she's me and she'll be there when I die. She was there before I was born, but I'm kind of carrying it now. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
the human personification of it in a way, or not that one of many people, but like
Yeah, like an emanation. Mm-hmm.
an emanation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then when I was, but I went through a phase. I think of like James Hillman's book, The Soul's Code, with what I'm
Mm.
about to say, where he
Mm-hmm.
talks about the acorn and how and I don't remember where he got that idea. I don't know if it's his original idea or not. Do you know?
I don't know, but it might be Jungian, but it doesn't matter. I
Yeah,
just take what you get out of it.
right.
Everything's
So,
cut up.
yeah, right. Right. So he talks about the acorn and like how you can have this, we all have a destiny, and astrology speaks to this as well. You have a chart. This is the chart you get. You don't get a different chart. You get this chart, right? And so it's your fate and it's your purpose in life. And if you're an acorn, you're going to grow into an oak tree. If you're a rose seed, you're going to grow into a rose plant. This is what you're going to do. But at some point, it happens that if that fate is fairly daunting, you may find yourself going the opposite direction, especially
Mm.
young. So he's speaking about the one that I remember him speaking about, and I don't like this. I'm not interested in cruelty to animals, but he was speaking about a bullfighter,
Mm.
somebody who became a famous bullfighter who used to be very shy and hide behind his mother, and then later became this very bold bullfighter. Or I think he was also speaking about a speaker who stuttered
Mm.
young and then becomes this great orator, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So um, when I was young, like I was very comfortable with what was non-rational as a child, but then when I hit teenagehood, I started to become very armored,
Mm.
and that was due to trauma
Mm-hmm.
in my life, and also I felt the way that the feminine is treated and women, and I wanted to have none of it. I wanted to be smarter than that. I wanted to be stronger than that. I was going to be different than my mother,
Mm-hmm.
etc. All the things that we do to kind of avoid that fate, that and so I became very rational, which is weird because I'm not that at all. But I decided that that's how I was going to manage it at some point. And when I say decided, I don't mean that I was like, I've made a decision. I'm going to be, anti anything non-rational. It was a trauma response. It was defense. And so I had a friend who we're still friends with now, a roommate who grew up with a Wiccan mother. And so
Mm.
she was very comfortable with all of this, and I used to laugh at it. Can you believe it?
Mm. No, but yes, because I was the same for a period. So I have
Okay,
had a similar journey.
okay. So I dismissed it. Oh, herbs, this. Like, I can't believe I said these things at the time. I laugh about it now because my whole life is this now. But and it was
Yeah, you're
destined
so
to be,
magical.
right? Thank you. You know, like it was supposed to be this way. And but I was avoiding this fate because I knew it was going to put me. Some part of me, this is what James Hillman talks about, knew that this would cause me to go on a path that was obviously not going to be easy, you know. And I was trying to maybe protect myself or self-preserve, right? So, but I went to an event through the Women's Center. I was at SUNY Purchase. That's where I went to school,
Mm.
and so it was through a feminist event. So I could still be very rational, right, about this. And there was a woman named Clytemnestra, she called herself, and she was doing this intro to witchcraft. And I went to it, and we were all holding hands, and something happened. I don't remember what. And I just started bawling.
Mm.
And I just lost my shit. And I was just crying and crying. And I was having like basic, like a mental health episode, but it was a breakthrough. But I couldn't
Mhm.
hold anybody's hand because I had like I was having to wipe my nose and I didn't even know what to do. I didn't know if I could leave. And the people who were there weren't particularly supportive, unfortunately. They didn't know how to support me in this.
Mm.
So I ended up leaving. But so it was a little that was quite not a little, it was traumatizing to have had that happen. But it was still a good thing because I was different after that.
Mhm.
And the fact that people were uncomfortable with me caused me to then seek out people who wouldn't be.
Mhm.
And some sort of surge of strength came through me because I then came into my calling
I
and I was
love it.
different, you
Have you
know?
ever seen the book? There's a book called Spiritual Emergency that Stanislav Grof edited with his wife at the time, Christina Grof. And it's like a anthology with different authors in it. But it's such a good book for that because that's what I call it, like those moments. It's like this way, this rational way, it's not working anymore. And it's like
Right.
something's got to give. And then people tend to have some sort of episode or something where you have to kind of recalibrate back to like where you really are at, and like get rid of a
Right.
lot of that armor. And it can be really a difficult, some people call it shaman sickness or something like that. But I
Right.
like that spiritual emergency book. That helped me because they had one like a similar. I was just like going, 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 and then it's like 24 and had this kind of like spiritual emergency thing. And I was like, okay, wait, I have to face that like this whole thing is a part of me that I kind of just like erased because I was too busy like trying to go to school and be a psychologist and be, professional and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to know what it is and have it named, isn't it? To have
It was very
acknowledged.
helpful. Yeah.
I find it so bizarre that psychology is a rational discipline.
Yeah.
What
It's
is
really
that? It's
lost its way,
literally
I
like the
feel.
study of the soul. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. America did it.
America, okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, basically like after like it's like basically like you know, when everybody emigrated because of World War II, it's like psychoanalysis and everything went to the US and then became this like, yeah, like instead of like the psychoanalytic training institute I went to, they're like into ego psychology, which is basically like making your defenses stronger so that you can like, make sure you go to work and have a partner and have a family and
Right.
like do all the things you're supposed to do. And I'm like, I don't think that's what psychoanalysis is supposed to be doing.
Right.
It's like I think it's supposed to be helping you like break down those defenses that you don't need or that you've built up because of trauma, et cetera, like you talked about, so that you can like move in a more like flexible way that's more like, yeah, yourself and not be like in this
Right.
little armor. But it's interesting as well because I was like, how did this come from? And it was Freud's daughter, Anna Freud, who started developing ego psychology and like really focusing on what all the defense mechanisms were. And then it's like, no wonder she developed ego psychology and wanted to strengthen her defenses because her dad was analyzing her when she was like a little child. And
Right.
like he literally wrote like a paper about like childhood masturbation fantasies that he wrote based on his daughter's analysis.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my
So
God, that's
so it's like,
true.
no wonder she's like, you got to make your ego strong. And also was lesbian. Like, no kidding.
Wow.
Of course. And also dedicated her life. She was like the first child psychologist. She like dedicated her life to helping kids.
Yeah.
So that's what
Wow.
happens.
Okay. Yeah, that's not okay.
No, but
Right.
that's what happens. And she
What
made
would
her
you call
way.
that? Enmeshment?
Yeah,
Or I
don't
don't know.
analyze your kids, folks.
So just don't do it,
They
right?
didn't
Don't
know that back
because
then,
really what
but
you're
it
doing is
seems
you're analyzing
obvious.
yourself anyway. You're not analyzing your child. You're
It's
working,
true.
you know?
That's good. That would be an interesting. Let's reread Freud's paper on childhood masturbation fantasies through the lens of these are Freud's fantasies.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so true. I also want to make sure to talk about your astrology because, of course, it's the
Okay.
beginning of the year and we have what I foresee to be a pretty intense year ahead of us. Um, but what do you think, April? And how do people come to you so they can procure your services? You also have classes and all sorts of things going on.
I do. I have a class on planetary magic coming up on the 15th. So it's
Mm,
beginner level class. And the idea is to develop a relationship with each of the planets, with
mm,
each of these gods. Um, and that's on my website, April's Arcana or April's Astrology, either one of them works. And then what was the other question? What did you ask
What are your
me
thoughts
about
about
astrology?
astrology this year?
Oh, the year, right, the year ahead. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ingresses from a few different planets. Saturn's going to change signs into Aries, and Neptune will, and they're going to make a conjunction. That I have no idea what's going to happen.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll
I
see.
mean,
It's going to be
Uranus goes to
something.
Gemini. It's like this, everything moves out of the yin elements into the yang elements. And
Mm,
so I see that feels to me anyway like acceleration,
hmm
which it's like, really? Okay, we can move even faster? Okay,
mm,
you know?
hmm
Um, Saturn, Neptune together. I mean, I don't know how to predict world events like that. I mostly work with like personal charts.
mm,
That's where I do my best work, I think. But I can apply that to some of the world things, right? And when I see Neptune and Saturn together, well, Liz Green, the
mm,
psychological astrologer that I learned so much from, my favorite book, astrology book ever, is called The Astrology of Fate.
mm,
She centers it around Pluto, but she also goes through the zodiac. She's also an artist, and she did all the cover art for her books. It's really
mm,
beautiful. But she talks about Neptune, Saturn meetings in the chart as being the signature of the artist, which
mm,
I think is interesting because the idea is that Neptune is the inspiration, right? Neptune's the oceanic experience and the mysticism and oneness with everything and the soul. And then Saturn is how things are manifest and how they're made solid in the world, and also the limitations of that.
mm.
So when you have Saturn and Neptune together in a personal chart, or I suppose collectively when they meet, I haven't done a study of what's happened before with this meeting, so I don't quite know, but it can, I know in a personal chart, it can create a feeling of low self-worth sometimes because you feel so much. It's almost like ocean and sand, or ocean and rock, where the ocean comes along, creates the sand that softens it, but then it's not a rock anymore. So you kind of lose
Mm,
your ego structure, right? We were
mm,
just talking about all that, right?
mm,
Neptune can completely annihilate it. And again, those moments where you'll cry, or, whatever will happen, or you'll have a spiritual emergency. Or the other way around, Saturn can come around and say to Neptune, why didn't you get a job? And kind of just close things up. So if you have that in your own chart, you can have that push pull going back and forth. But that irritation is also the irritation that creates the pearl that makes something happen, so
mm,
that you create something, because you'll have that Saturn saying, make this into something productive, make this into something. And Neptune saying, I need to express this somehow in physical form. It's not enough to just feel it.
mm.
So I don't know. In Aries, some kind of breakthrough or pioneering thing, or I don't know.
We'll see. I feel
We'll
like, yeah,
see.
those kinds of times happen in psychoanalysis too, when you're like, that's why it's good to like come multiple times a week if you can, because when you're in that process of kind of eroding the ego structure so that you can
Yeah,
become the sand at the pearl, it's like it's necessary, but it can be uncomfortable and a little terrifying, because you're used to
terrifying.
having all of those defenses in place, and they're also
Yeah,
there for a reason, like you said, from trauma. So it's like they've been put there for a reason, they're protecting you, but then at some point they start like inhibiting you and they're not protecting you anymore, they're like getting in your way. So then you have to kind of break them down so you can like form in a new way that's not like the way you formed then was usually because of your home environment and the home that
yeah,
your parents created, that you had to grow up in and you had to protect yourself in certain ways. But then when you have your own home environment, you don't necessarily want to recreate the same thing. So you have to
right,
kind of break out of that structure. And sometimes there's a period where it's like you've broken the defenses down, but you haven't really like solidified yet. I always call it traversing the void. There's like this like void
right.
period where it's like it's pretty terrifying because it's new territory, it's uncharted terrain. It's like
Yeah,
I have to trust that I can move forward and things are gonna work out. But there's a moment you have to kind of take that fool's leap off the cliff, and trust that something's gonna work out. But it can be difficult. So
right.
feel like best case scenario. Hopefully, it's might be a difficult year, but will be necessary for future to come back together in a better way. We hope.
Yeah, Salve coagula.
Yeah, we hope. Because I just hope we can do that as humans before we screw up the climate too much. So we'll see.
Well, that's something I think a lot about with Pluto having gone into Aquarius. I think there's a lot of focus on from many on AI
Mm,
being this threat.
mm,
Have you heard of James Bridle?
mm, mm,
Oh, they're fantastic. They would be somebody to have on your podcast, because
mm,
they're so many things. They wrote a book, Ways of Knowing.
mm,
They're sort of post-humanist. I don't know how to describe their work. They work a lot with technology and AI and post-humanist thought and queer studies, and bring it all together into these. There's a good, I came across them through the On Being podcast.
mm,
But they were talking about AI, like we're so concerned about AI being a threat, like extraterrestrials coming and taking us over, because that's the way we're treating other earthlings,
mm,
right? And AI could also be so many other things. I mean, and we're forgetting to recognize all the technologies that are non-human that are already in existence. The way that, I mean, there's so many different ways of knowing. That's the
mm,
whole idea here. And that really opened my mind up to even the way I'm thinking about the gods. Like, make them into humans? That's
mm,
even a little bit cheeky, right? Like, aren't they more than that?
mm,
Why are we making them in our own image? It's a way to relate, of course, but um, Pluto in Aquarius. Aquarius is the human, and Pluto is death.
mm,
And I think of like the death of humanism, The way that
Mm.
we have this sort of pyramid scheme hierarchy where everybody's trying to get up to the top of the pyramid, have the same rights and ways of being seen, and as you know, straight white guy, God the Father in this, in the sky, kind of at the top of this pyramid, and everybody
Mm-hmm.
wants to be there, but you can't do that and have everything be sustainable. It has to be, Aquarius is about everything being sort of more lateral,
Mm-hmm.
more, um, I want to say democratic, but even
Polytheistic.
that's not
Yeah,
right.
polytheistic instead of monotheistic, you know.
Yep,
There's not one
that,
person on top. It's like,
and then
yeah,
also
cis hetero
treating
white
other
guy.
earthlings as equals.
Mm-hmm.
Not assuming that intelligence, which is what Aquarius is, an air sign, has to do with intelligence in the nervous system, not assuming that the human ways of intelligence are how you define intelligence, and then every other being has to have something similar. That's the measuring stick. And if it's not that, then it's not intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm thinking of it as like the death of that sort of way, human centrism,
Yeah,
because I think
exactly.
it's the only way we're going to be able to stay here is if we get out of our own ass and like our narcissism and making ourselves the center of everything. We're not. It's
No.
very stupid, really.
It is. It's like a little toddler. You know?
Yeah.
Like, come
Right.
on, humans. Can we like be somewhat adults instead of like little tantrum throwing toddlers, please?
Right.
I
Yeah.
know. And you, of course, have your wonderful Gwitty. You have a close personal relationship with your dog, and that of course they're intelligent. Like I just like yeah, it drives me crazy. It's like one other person I want to have that I've been meaning to ask on the podcast forever, but I'm always trying to like catch up with people I've invited, and then it just keeps going. But Patricia McCormack. And I saw her at a talk here in Sweden a few years ago, and she said
Okay.
something really great that was, she's vegan and she was talking about like, humans are so afraid of the aliens doing to us what we do to animals, like animal
Yes.
testing and all of this, like cutting off their eyelids and doing all this horrible stuff and like being like, they can't feel anything or just not caring, it's like, what
Right.
is this? It's very
Right.
subhuman, that's for sure, but
Right.
sadly very human, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, of course, like the animals are intelligent, the earth is intelligent. Come on.
Right. Right. The earth is intelligent and alive. That part too. Right. Our ancestors knew that.
They sure did, and a lot of
Many
people still
people,
do.
many people still do.
We need to get back to that and
Right.
appreciating, yeah, everyone doesn't have to be the same and not the top. Everyone should just appreciate everybody's differences and
Right.
everybody has their own gifts to share and that
Right.
includes not just all the different kinds of wonderful humans, but all the different kinds of all the sentient creatures and all the different ways of the land and the
Right.
streams and the stones, like you said, you want to touch all the stones. I've never been to Greece. I really would love to go sometime, visit these kinds of places.
Oh, it's so, yeah, something. And I live in Ireland, so I live within every direction I can go in. There's stone circles and there's,
Mm,
these ancient things that nobody knows how they were built, why they were built exactly. I mean, you can kind of tune into it yourself and know in your way, but from an academic archaeological point of view, nobody knows, evidence-based kind of thing. But the other one of the pieces that I performed at in Copenhagen was the my encounter I had with Finvara, who is also an underworld god. He's the king of the fairies of Connacht, the province of Ireland that I live in. And I had this interaction with him at his castle, which I didn't know that's where I was when I
mm.
just went on a walk, you know,
Yeah, but
and
your
I
intuition leads you.
I went to the top and I was like, where I'm in this kind of place. And I could hear a male, I could feel a masculine presence and hear a male voice
Mm,
speaking to me, but not in English. It's hard to describe how this is heard, right? But I did hear. So anyway, a rainstorm came in, and it had been sunny, and weirdly there was nobody there, which was the case at Eleusis too. Which
Mm,
when it's almost like time just shifts in these moments, and then it opens up into this space for this communication to happen. I don't know. It's like, and that's sort of a thing with fairy in Ireland that's recognized in the lore, is that you move into this other time zone when
mm,
you're communicating. And so a rainstorm came in when I was at the top of this mountain. You can see them coming. And I just had the impulse to dance there too. So I was dancing in the rain, and he said, "Why don't you take your clothes off?" And I was like, "How about not?" Because I just had this feeling like that's just not, I'm being tested,
mm,
like this is not the thing to do. And I was right, and I'll tell you why in a second. But he then, like, the dancing was good enough, right? And then I kind of don't remember a lot of what happened, but I remember being in this emerald forest at the base of a tree that he then became the tree.
mm,
And I was able to ask him questions about life and my
mm,
life and everything. And he would answer me. He was sort of giving me this as a healing, and like as a, I had passed a test of some kind, and I had given an offering, and he was glad to be seen. Those are
mm,
the sort of feelings I got,
mhm,
to be recognized. And then at some point, I was walking back down the hill, and there were all these people all around me just doing their walks. And I was coming to the bottom of the hill and toward my car, and I was all soaking wet from the rain, and I was freezing.
mm,
I got in my car, went home, and Googled where I was. It was called Nakma, right? And that's where Finvara lives,
mm,
the king of Connacht, the fairy king. And what he does is he kidnaps women,
mm.
and he has the dual role of kidnapping women and healing them.
Mm,
And I didn't know that when I was there. So the taking the clothes was like, because if you take the clothes, how am I going to go down the hill? Obviously, I can't go, can't leave without
mhm.
my clothes. So, or at least that's the way it would feel to me, right? Physically you can, but like it'd be a little bit of a
A
thing.
little
So
harder. Yeah.
a little harder to do, right? It'd be an issue. So yeah, so that was one of the poems that I read in
But
the
luckily you're in
performance.
Ireland, so you can just be like, the fairy king took my clothes, and people be like, oh, we understand. It's like,
Maybe
get to your
that would be
car.
good. Yeah, and all of it's been documented. There's
Of
a there's
course.
a website that has recorded. They sent children out, and young adults, I think, to speak with the older people in the towns to
Get
collect the
the
stories that
stories.
they remember.
Ooh, that's so wonderful.
So it's all handwritten, and so they have people, people can volunteer to type it out, so that's also, typed on this
Oh,
website. And I'm not the first person that's had that kind of, yeah, that kind of interaction.
lovely. I love that. Well, that's great. So we've come full circle back to your performance in Copenhagen, and we're just at the
Yeah.
end of our hour. Um,
Okay.
it was so great to have you. I definitely send people to your website, get astrological readings. You also do like classes for belly dance and things like that too sometimes.
I do. I do online classes for belly dance. I do that. Yep.
Yeah,
So, and you can
there's
find me on my
always something going
Instagram. I,
on.
I usually advertise on there, and April Raven is my Instagram.
Perfect. And it's April, Aepril, Raven.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I can't wait to see you again in person. It was super
Oh,
fun.
thank you for having me. And yeah, I can't wait to see you again too.